Are we live?
We're live.
Steve. Welcome home, Steve.
I'm in the land of good internet.
That's right. Oh, man. No more Chicago for you.
No more Chicago for me. No more.
Wow. How does it feel? How does it
It
feel to
was
be
good.
home?
It was a great conference, but I'm
Yeah.
glad to be back here with you on a
Yeah.
Monday morning
That's
in
right.
my office. Oh, sorry, wrong way. In my office over here
hmm
and chilling with you, man. So it's good
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Welcome home. How was Mother's Day for you?
It was great. It was great. Um, Celebrated my wife and got to go
Yep.
out and hang out with my mother-in-law and a bunch of family out
Nice.
at their place. They're local now, so that was really cool this year to be able to be together. And then
Oh, that's excellent.
got to call my mom and dad. What about you, man? I heard you
Oh,
were hanging with Nikki.
yeah. 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 Well, yesterday I got to celebrate my mom, and then it was also my nephew's birthday. So, and actually in Brazil it's grandchildren's day, something like that.
Okay.
So, it was like an aurora borealis of sorts. You know what I mean? And so we decided to, of course, we went to church. Spent the morning worshiping the Lord with my mother. Um, we had lunch. We had a wonderful lunch at a place down here called Fred's Soul Food Buffet. It's amazing. Oh, terrible wait. I mean, it was a Mother's Day crowd, so it was like an hour long wait. But
Oh
we
man.
got the food. It was wonderful. Came back, took like one of the best naps of my life, and then went to Hollywood Studios, which is part, of course, of Walt Disney World. Um, there's Magic Kingdom, there's Epcot, there's Animal Kingdom, and there's Hollywood Studios. Let me tell you something about Hollywood Studios, Steve. Um, it is arguably the best of all four parks. And I'll tell you why. Because I rode a little ride called Rise of the Resistance, which I've gone on before, but I don't know. I don't remember it being so impressive. But this time I went, and Steve, it was spectacular.
Oh yeah.
Especially, oh, so good, especially from a media perspective. The way that they integrate video into the experience is just amazing.
I love how you're going places and looking at
Sometimes
like
I
how things are executed. And like, yeah, do I like that? Do I not? Isn't that how us creatives are? We're
yeah,
like always judging how that looks.
there's a word for that. Passion.
Passion. It is passion until we can't ever turn our
But you
brain
know
off.
what?
I struggle with turning my brain off, and I
Yeah.
have to force myself to be like, "No, I need to worship here. I'm not. I'm not working. I'm not on call. Like, just
Right.
don't be worried
Yeah,
about."
so I went to my sister's church yesterday morning, and they were having some tech issues, and I was like, "Oof, that'll ruin your worship experience if you're."
You're there. Oh, that's funny.
I was like, I can't worship if they're not going to be able to fix this this glitch.
Oh, that's funny.
If they can't figure out the refresh rate of their LED screen versus their camera, I'm
I'm
sorry, I'm
done.
not going
I'm
to be able
out.
to
I'm
worship.
out. I'm done. Close my eyes. I'm worshiping.
Yeah, that's right.
Why are you wearing a blindfold, sir? Because I can't work. I can't deal with your screen refresh rate.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we can get to it. Again, sorry last
Let's
week I
go.
was dealing with some stuff. Hopefully, what we covered today, some of what I think we covered last week was like templates. So, what I'm
Mhm.
going to cover today, hopefully, will maybe kind of touch into some of that. And depending on if we have time at the end, I can try to kind of give a brief recap of what was screwed up last week with the stream. But we're back to streaming each week now. Sorry, today is a little later than normal, but we'll be back next week at our normal time, 11:30 in the 11 o'clock in the morning next Monday, and we'll be ready to jump back into a little more consistency. So, Sheik, I thought today we kind of would cover lower thirds, how I
Yep.
build from scratch. So, if I'm rolling out a new series, how I kind of bring that package together. Obviously, depending on your church, your pastor, this you may be like looking at what I'm going to show you today and be like, well, my pastor has way more notes than that. So, like, obviously you might have to understand, like, so the church that I'm helping on a weekly basis build stuff out, we have way more notes than just kind of a couple bullet points. But we've only got so much time we're going to be able to spend together, and I want to show you kind of how
Yeah.
I build the lower thirds out and get them prepped. So my thought was to have a few points, so at the end we'll execute out a sermon. But initially, I want to show you how I build the theme, how I build everything out, how I set it up for Bible, how I set it up for quotes, how I set it up for different parts of what you might need for a message, which then will allow you to execute out the content that you need quickly and efficiently. And I'll try to show you how to do that by building a couple sermons out at the end. So that was kind of my thought today. If you have questions, as always, let us know. We don't want this to be just Sheik and I talking at you. We'd love to support you. So I would love to get to a spot where if there's things that your church needs help with, your kids' ministry needs help with, your student ministry needs help with, we'd love to be a resource of maybe figuring that out in this forum, in this setting. So you can drop notes in the chat. You can email us. At the end, we'll drop our email address where you can email questions to. And we would just love to make this a community where we help come alongside you and serve you on Monday mornings after the weekend so that we can kind of help diagnose issues or help be a part of a community here. So the goal here is to build a community of serving your ProPresenter team and helping you use this software to the fullest. So,
That's right.
Sheik, I thought we would
Yes.
today jump into um, our Daniel series. So I'm going to
Yeah, I love that.
I'm gonna
Drop a link.
drop a link in the chat. Give me 1 second, guys. So let me drop this link here. So we just came out with we released a new box um, called Daniel Out of the Lion's Den.
Uh, Series media, Steve. That's a series media.
Sorry, Series Media. My apologies. I'm
Yes.
still used
Thank you.
to the old term. Appreciate you
Yeah.
correcting me that graciously. Sheik, way to go.
Yeah. There you go.
So Series
Sorry.
Media,
I'm sorry I
uh,
had to,
yeah,
pull rank.
I know, full rank on me. So I dropped a link in the chat. The Church Visuals account posted a link. That's the link to the product I'm discussing. Series Media includes everything you need to roll out a series. And so, what I wanted to show you specifically highlighted some of the lower third content, and also at the end show
Yeah.
you kind of how you could set the bumper up in your flow. So, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to dive in and make sure we hear Sheik. Sheik, can I just make sure you're live? Your audio's
Yep.
live. Yep.
Hello,
Good.
testing.
Good. Good. We're
Shake
good.
is here.
You're here. Good.
Rise of the Resistance is the best.
Sweet. So, what I like to do is to start with a series is I'm going to go into my themes and I'm going to create a new theme. I'm going to title this Daniel um, out, and there's specific characters you can't use. You can't use like colons. So I'm going to use a dash. I'm going to just do Daniel out of.
Steve, real quick, can you that you created that new theme really quickly? Can you,
Yeah.
just for people who don't
Yeah.
know,
So the
go to that
theme,
step
the
one
theme
time?
button at the top, and then there's a plus button here, and I'm going to add a new theme by doing that. And I'm going to go Daniel out of the lion's den. And so now that's going to open up this theme, which obviously has nothing in it, but that's the start of building a theme from scratch. And so there's a couple things instantaneously every week that I'm going to always need. I'm going to always need the scripture layout so that I can actually pull scripture quickly and effectively within the Bible app of ProPresenter. I'm always going to need, I'm going to show you guys here a sermon notes plan. So I built a sermon notes plan for this series. There's 6 sermons. Obviously, very minimal points. Your pastor may have 3 points, or he may have more. It depends on where he's at, but the thought will still remain the same. We're going to pull the passage together in lower third format. We're going to put some points together, and we're also going to look at adding some quotes to the series as well. And we'll package this all together in a couple sermons. So this is an outline of
Now,
what.
Steve, just for clarity, what you're showing us is for the broadcast graph for the stream or for iMag.
It would be, well, it depends on your church and what you're doing. More often than not, the
Yeah.
lower thirds in a lot of churches are being shown in the room and on the stream. A lot of churches aren't doing like
Okay.
specific for each. But if you are a church that's doing broadcast versus in room, this might just be your broadcast lower thirds. If you're a church that's doing
Okay.
both, for example, the church that I help with each week, we have both large screen, center screen stuff, and we have lower thirds. I'm
Hmm.
just showing you the lower
Yeah.
thirds part of it. So this is how you would
Right.
build
Okay.
content for a broadcast IMAG look. Um,
Hmm.
at a later point in time, I can show you how to roll these packages out into a both and situation. So both a
Right.
full screen and a, but that's a little more complex. But my thought here was to cover lower thirds for people and how I kind of use
Sure.
those and
Yep.
roll through those really quick. So you'll see a little outline that I have here. I'm going to leave this up so you guys can see kind of my outline here as I build this out. So actually, first I'm going to go to let's go away from the outline real quick, and I'm going to just go to the full screen as I build some templates out for us, and then as we get into the notes, I'll build in an outline. So there's a couple ways you could start with this. A lot of like so, for example, for us church visuals, we have in our box. I'm going to bring these. I'm going to show you guys this as I bring
Series
in
Media.
box series media. And bro, I worked for 4 years with it as a box. It's going to take a year to get that out of my name, get that out of my. So, series media, we are
Steve, no,
releasing.
I love being able to
I
correct you.
know it's
This is
great,
great
right?
for me.
It's great. You
I'm
love it.
having the time of my life
I
right
know,
now.
I know. So, we release lower thirds with with the series media itself. So
Hmm.
there is a let's see, there it is. So you've got a lower third scripture and a lower third notes option. So you could just bring those in as they are. So that would be right there. I'm going to add a new slide and bring in the other one and just bring those in as we've created them for you. So that is one option you could do like just to start. And I've done that before. It's there's no right or wrong way. It's really just what does your church, what is your experience, what do you want to do? But you can resize those by just dragging the boxes that show up, the handles on the corners and sides, and you can drag
And then
those.
use shift to constrain proportions.
You do. If you don't want to constrain any proportions, you can hit the shift button and that will lock the ratio as you do that. So
Yeah.
if you want to lock the ratio, hit shift and
So you're not
you
stretching
can't
stuff
stretch
out.
or do anything crazy. So so let's just say we're going to use this kind of to start. This will be our first setup. So what I always want to look at is you want the graphic element to be the last item on the layer. So I want to move this down because I added it after the text element. And the reason that's important is you don't want text. You want the text to be above the artwork so it
Yeah.
shows up.
Right.
So I'm going to do that for
So right. Okay.
both. What we're going to do here now is we're going to set up our, you know, how it's going to look on screen. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy in, just going to go to Daniel 1. I'm going to copy in some text to this just so we can see what some text looks like on this lower third. So I'm going to copy it, paste, and match the style. So now you can see how it's running, and you'll notice that on this lower third, there's stuff here on the left and stuff here on the right that could be hard to kind of get the text to pop out in front of. So I'm probably going to shrink this box a little bit to ensure that it is readable.
That's good.
I'm going to look at so this box is the entire bounds of where text is. The reason that's important is if you have a longer passage, it could spill out. If you make this box really short, then you'll notice what happens. You see how stuff is spilling out over top of the box. So you want to be mindful of as
Right.
you're building the
Right.
box, like you've given it enough space, but you also aren't giving it too much space. Like look at what that looks like, what you need for your church. If your church does more verse by verse, and you guys break up each verse and you kind of run through a bunch of lower thirds for that, you may want to shrink your box up because your verse would only be, this portion right here. But you're going to set the box bounds for what you want, and then I'm
And
also,
obviously doing the
yep,
stuff as far as far in advance as possible is going to help out, ideally will help out your final product.
yes,
And in kind of an ideal situation.
Yeah, and if you've never built these out before, this might take a little longer. Once you've built them out and done this once, then when you go into the next sermon series, you're really just changing stuff. Like you can copy over and change
Yeah.
stuff out. So I'm going to look at some different text. One thing to keep in mind with fonts is you can load new fonts into your computer. And I like to do that. A lot of times I'll try to match the font for the series. But there is one thing to consider is that if you do that, you have to load it in across the production machine. So if you're building this in your machine, you're going to sync it to your production machine. If that font is not there, then you may find it hard to it won't link, and then it'll pick some random font. So depending on your church situation, if you know how to load fonts in, you may choose to not do that or do that. And so you can kind of do that on a case by case basis. I'm gonna just pick Lucidia Grand for right now, something a little more simple and
Hmm.
standard. I'm going to look at kind of formatting the text this way. And then what we need to do for this specific slide is you'll notice that I have a slide for the actual verse, but there's a box here for the reference. And so we actually need to create a
Right.
second text box. So I'm going to copy and paste that text box. I'm going to type in the reference of Daniel 1, 1 through 2. And so now I have a reference text box. I'm going to left justify this for now just to kind of play with. And what I'm going to do is shrink this into the bounds of this box so that it stays within that box. It doesn't ever leave that. And then I'm also going to, I think for me, look at potentially doing centered text, and I'm going to bold it.
Hmm.
And I like to do this. This may be, Sheik, you can tell me if this is crazy, but I like to do caps for some things like this,
Yeah, I like
especially.
that.
So I'm going to do
Yep.
that. And I might try to play with, because of this Daniel look kind of has this outline look. I'm going to play with increasing the text here like this. I'm going to make the text color transparent, but I'm going to add in a stroke, and I'm going to stroke it a little bit. And I'm going to just kind of play off a little bit this Daniel kind of look that we've got
Yeah,
going
sure.
here.
I like that.
And then now that I've got that set, so now I have a verse reference spot. I have the actual verse text box. The only thing left to do is I'm going to actually name these. This is going to be the verse, and this is going to I'm right clicking on it and I'm hitting rename, and I'm going to say reference. The reason that's helpful is when we get to actually lining it up with the Bible, we'll be set. So once I built this first one, the scripture template, now stuff starts to move really quickly and easily because now I've got text formatted the way that I want, and now I can take elements and copy it. So I'm going to take this text box that says verse.
Steve, real quick, is there an optimal amount of lines that you want, lines of text that you want for the lower third?
I I really like a couple to a few lines, 2 to 3 lines, especially for verses.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
text box is pretty big for me, and I'm going to show you guys
Hmm.
next how to make a more customized version if you want. But one thing to consider too is like I like 2 to 3 lines, but I want you to keep in mind you need to think about your team, your space,
Hmm.
what works for your church. So um, I would always say for lyrics, you should do 2 lines only, maybe three at max, and try to get your team to be, at a spot where they can execute that well. During the sermon, though, your team may be at a spot where your church wants to see more text on screen. They don't want there to be, 6 verses flying at them, six different, each verse flying at them, and they'd
Yeah.
like there to be more. So your church leadership may say, we really want to see more text on screen. We'd like to do, 3 or 4 passages, and you may need to change up what you're doing. And that may just be a desire of
Sure.
people to take notes and be able to follow along. The church I'm at right now that not that I'm at, but that I'm partnering with and helping them each week, we have a lot of bullet points that we're building in. And so I try to allow there to be 5 or 6 lines of text that build in because there's so many note taking opportunities for them to do. So it really just depends on where
Okay.
you're at, what your church needs are. So I wouldn't, try to dictate for you how you should do it.
Yeah.
I,
Okay.
I think the more lines of text you have, it's harder to read depending on your screen situation. And so you need to consider your room, your space, what's the best option for that. I'm going to build out a standard look here, kind of for some notes, for some bullet points. I'm going to delete this text option, this text box, because I copied the box from here. So I clicked here on the verse layer. I hit Command C to copy it. I'm going to come over here, hit Command V to paste it onto the slide. And I'm going to remove some of the text because this will not be a huge form text situation. This will be like a more short form, like simple bullet point kind of thing. And I'm going to
Hmm.
probably go with more of a centered look. I'm going to
Sure.
shrink this up a bit to maybe fall like this. And I'm going to make it bold. And I might go like, uh, I italicize it depending on. Looks like it doesn't want to italicize, so we'll just go with bold. So this would be more of a sermon point, kind of simple, like point action item that your pastor might have. That's maybe not as full scripture, but that's kind of a large point that can fit there. And then I'm going to create one more version. I'm going to create a smaller point that if there's more text on screen, he's building out different points. I'm going to have that here, and I'm going to make that sit towards the top so that we can build bullet points in from the top to the bottom. And so that gives me right there a couple of different options to kind of start with, to play with as we were to build my sermon out. So I would be now ready to start diving into the sermon look itself. Um, what I'm going to go ahead and do is build out the sermon with this look, and then I'm going to show you how to build another look a different way, and then change the content to match that new look. So that'll kind of give you kind of some playing around with changing the template quickly on the fly as well. That sound good? Shake?
That sounds great.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
I
So
love it.
what we're going to do now is make sure that you guys can see the um, screen where I have my notes here. And we're going to create a new presentation called, so we go to the library, we go to this plus button. I'm going to hit new presentation. I'm putting it in the sermon library. I'm going to put it on this Sunday worship playlist. I'm going to call this Daniel chapter 1 sermon.
Hmm.
And now that's in my playlist. And I've got my first slide here. So as I can see, as you guys can see on the notes, this is a Daniel 1 series. So I'm going to go to the Bible app. I have the NIV version loaded that I'm going to use. I'm going to type Daniel 1. Before I hit enter, though, I'm going to come over to the options tab. I'm going to select the theme. So I'm going to go here to the theme. I'm going to go to this Daniel theme, select scripture, and I'm going to look at the settings I have. So I'm going to break on a new verse every single time. I'm going to show the verse references on each slide, and I'm going to choose not to preserve font color because this is Old Testament, so it shouldn't be a need to have red there.
Hmm.
I can choose to have the translation displayed. I'll go ahead and do that. And I'm not going to have the verse numbers displayed because I'm breaking it on a new verse every single time. And I'm going to import into the sermon library. And that'll be the options that I want set. I can now hit enter on this Daniel 1 search. And you'll notice there's 21 verses in Daniel. It's pulling them up. Um, what I want to look here is how it's routed the content. So the verse section is tied to the correct box, the
Oh,
verse
wow.
box. The reference box is tied to the reference box. And so as this builds out, which it's taking a little bit, just because my computer's running this whole entire stream and everything, but let's look
Right.
here at, let's change the look to, so you'll see here
Hmm.
that I have the different passages showing up now. Um, it'll yours will load yours will actually load thumbnails here better than mine. Mine's just being a little ridiculous, to be honest. So, but it'll load the thumbnails, but you'll see over here on the right that I can see the different passages verses here are all there. So I can now actually take this and save this as both a playlist, if I save it to a playlist, or I can copy it to the presentation. I'm going to copy it to that actual presentation. So when I go back to my show presentation, you'll notice here that I have the scripture lined up. And I'm going to figure out why it's being a little bit ridiculous, guys. Give me one sec. I'm going to restart. You guys might laugh.
Are you trying to get the thumbnail? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I'm trying to show you how to look on your screen when you pull it up. So
Hmm.
that way you can see a more
Yeah,
accurate
that
representation.
that's fascinating that you can set the Bible verse to just load dynamically like
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
You know that's not necessarily something that we would. At least it's not something I would use in kids ministry, youth ministry, because I was loading in JPEGs.
Right.
But push comes to shove, and you're in a tight spot.
Yeah. I mean, if you need something on the fly, it's very
Right.
helpful for that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna reformat this with not breaking on a new verse, and you'll notice it puts more text on each slide. Um, but then it does some weird stuff depending on how you've laid it out. You see his God is kind of showing up. That probably should be on the previous slide. So that's one reason why I tend to go away from that. But you can do it
Are
however
you
works for you and your church.
are you able to edit the text once it's been?
Yeah, once you import it, you can edit. So if I
Okay.
go to the editor here, I can come into a slide and hit edit, and now I can edit that text box
Okay.
however I want to. So yeah, you
Sure.
can do that. So I just like this because it's usually foolproof. It just puts the whole verse on each slide, and I can roll through like that. So you'll notice in our notes that is the first thing we're probably going to do is read the passage, Daniel 1. The sermon title is going to be Faithful in Exile. So, we may start off with reading the passage, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this slide. I'm going to select the theme. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to select this template here, which loads that up. I'm going to go to editor, and I'm going to type in the title of this passage. So it's Faithful in Exile, and I'm going to then put the series Daniel out of the lion's den. Paste match style. And I'm going to make this not bold, regular. I'm going to shift this down in size, shift this back up in size, because this is the title of the week. So there might be my sermon title that I have laid out. And now I can begin to build out my set. And because I've created this template, I can create a bunch of blank slides. And so now I'm going to say, okay, the next thing up is the first point. Daniel's resolved not to defile himself, which is the first point that we have here. I'm going to select this slide. I'm going to take the theme. I'm going to select this point here. And I'm going to edit it and copy and paste. And the way I copy and paste from a document and retain the formatting is by right-clicking in the text box, hitting paste and match style, and that will match the style of the text box itself. And I can put this here, and I can put point one. And you might, at this point, now that you start to build out theme, points and stuff, you might say, man, I want to change that a little bit to how I had that theme. and tweak it up. That's totally cool. I do that a lot because that theme just kind of gets me started, and then if I'm going to use that week to week, I'll go back and modify the theme at a later point. But that's the first
Steve,
point. Go ahead.
I just noticed some formatting that I think is would be good to point out. You've got it looks like you've got your text box set to vertical, centering vertically every time, which is great.
It's actually off because this box is not centered. If I were to center it, it would look like this, which
No,
kind
no,
of.
no, no. Within the text
Oh,
box
I got you. Yeah,
itself,
vertically. Yeah,
the text,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
and it looks like that is on the right over there.
Yes, the text. This box is centered vertically and vertically and horizontal, vertically, and then it's lower third horizontal. Justified. Is that what you're saying? This box right here.
Well, no, the text within the text box.
I got you. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
justified within it's centered within the lower third. Correct. Yes.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yep.
I'm not 100% sure we're on the same page, but I think that we've
Well, it's
communicated.
not centered. Like
Yeah, there you go.
this is not
Yeah,
centered. It is now, but I actually
right.
have it
No,
off center a little bit because I'm trying not
but
to.
if you highlight the text
Uh huh.
and then on the right, on the panel on the right, yeah,
It's
right
left
below where your
justified.
cursor is,
And
but
it's
right below
yes,
there,
it's center
that
justified. Yes,
centered vertically within the
within the
text
text box.
box.
You said it. Okay, I got you now.
Yeah,
You are
yeah, yeah.
correct.
Steve, I'm a graphic designer, so that
Okay,
that terminology is
it's
just.
important for you.
But I think it's important because I was wondering as you were going, I noticed that it was being centered vertically. So it's nice to see that that is an option that you can do across
Yeah,
your entire look.
yeah, you can do that for sure. So once I start adding in points, that becomes an option for you.
Yeah,
This is great if you just have lower thirds. If you have a center screen and you're doing stuff, I actually have to look at that heavily and decide if that's really how I want to justify stuff because it can create some
sure.
complications there with large screens and changing a bunch. Um, so you'll notice here I put really quick, I copied over those slides and just added text to it. So now it's point two and point three. I'm going to do this and add the punctuation to it. And we have that there. So really quickly, I just copied over the slide I did here, added in the text, copied over the slide again, added in this text, and I've created builds. You can do builds within ProPresenter, so you don't have to do those manually. The only thing I would just say is when you build those builds in with ProPresenter, there's not a way to physically like skip a build really. You have to go through them all. So I tend to like to build out my builds because it'll allow me the flexibility if a point changes and we want to do something in the actual middle of a slide change, we can do that. If it's all in one slide, then you have to almost like go back through them. So um, that's just how I've always built them. But there's that set for you. So now I've got 3 points built out, and what I can do is load up at the end. I'm going to load in here the actual image, the graphic image. Once we're done, we may need to go back to, let's see, let's go here, graphics. There we go. I'll load this up.
And our new series media also includes a lot more of the title overlay
Yeah, there's
PNGs.
some more items included with that for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's really quick, easy how I create those lower thirds for a Sunday. I mean, that's a simple sermon. Your sermon may be more. I've had some sermons that are about as complex as that, 3 points in scripture, but I have all the scripture here. I've got my points, my sermon title, and then my sermon points here that you can do. What I want to show you now is if you want to modify and you're like, well, I want to create my own, kind of text boxes. I don't want to go with just the straight whatever you've given me. There is some ways to do that. So we're going to go back into this theme, which will be in your themes menu. Click on theme, click the little pencil icon that is the editor. I'm going to come into it.
You know what I like about the way that you've done this as well is that because you just kind of built everything off of one slide, as you're going through the different slides, that lower third isn't jumping around.
Yes, that's
You
why I
know,
do that.
that's
Is I
crazy.
want to keep it consistent. I don't want there to be jumping. I don't want there to be movement. I want it to be the
Yep.
same. The only time it's different is so now I'm going to begin to show you how to customize lower thirds a little more based on what you have, and at that point they may change, but you don't want them drastically changing. It's one thing if you're putting them
Right.
on and off, and one's a scripture look, it's a little bigger, and one's a simple point, it's a little smaller,
Right.
but you want consistency throughout. So I'm going
Yeah.
to copy these 3 slides to kind of give me a starting point. So I'm going to come here to this blank slide I've added. I'm going to hit Command V, which is going to paste it. And so now what I'm going to do is say, I don't want this lower third. I want to delete this out. And I'm going to build my own lower third. So I'm going to come into shape, rectangle, and let's say that I want to kind of go with more of a thinner lower third,
Mhm.
and I want to kind of come out on the right side of it. And then I'm going to be a little crazy. I'm going to make this a different color just for our sake right now. And I'm going to come down here, and I want my verse to be on the lower part of the screen.
Mhm.
So this is a little different shape than what we had originally. And so now I can look at, there's a couple ways to handle this. You could potentially, if you wanted to, fill it with a color. So if I wanted to bring this image over, I could color it to match some of this. So if I want to color this this same, red
Mm.
that's in the main here, I can do that. And then I could come over here and color this same turquoise.
Sorry, Steve. My kids are making noise in the
No,
background.
it's my kids. So you don't have to apologize for my kids. So, or I want to use that same black from the back of the
Yeah.
background, and then I want to use the same red. Like you can do that. That'd be one option you could do. The other
Yeah.
option could
Yeah.
be
That's great.
the other option would be like, let's say I want to do the black of this background, but I want to do a gradient on this block.
Mm.
I could do a gradient fill, and I'm going to do this red to green situation. So I'm going to do red, and then I'm going to match this green that's in this graphic, this turquoise green.
Retro green. That's interesting.
I could
Hey, not
I could
bad,
do something like that. I could play around with that.
Steve. I doubted you, but
Well, you doubted me. Great, cool. But here's what's so you can play around with color shift, like color shaping like that. That can work for some series. I really like
yeah.
this background though. I'd like to actually lean into actually bringing in that media item. So I'm going to actually fill it
Sure.
with the media item. I'm going to go into our worship background set here, and I'm going to look at some of these and go, um, maybe more. Like I like some of this in here. I'm going to pull this image in. I'm going to show you, just follow me a little bit. It looks weird now, but I'm going to scale to fill it, which is going to fill the whole image. But then what I'm
Hmm.
going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to crop out a section that I want to actually use. So I'm going to crop
Oh my gosh,
this section,
that is brilliant.
but then I'm also going to adjust the color. because I don't want it to compete with the text. So I'm going to
Right.
contrast it a little differently.
Can you drop the opacity?
You could drop the opacity on it by going here. If it'll close on me, and then I can drop the opacity of the shape.
Okay. Hmm.
So now
Wow.
I'm going to bring this text now in front of all this, and now I've created a more customized lower third that I'm going to now fill this box with and reset up the text to fit it well. And I'm going to bring this over in here, and I'm going to left justify it. Notice I'm ensuring that things line up. So I'm looking at my guidelines and making sure stuff matches and is lined up fully because this is my template. So now that's a different look I could go with. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit to fit in this box a little better. What do you think of
How
that?
does that affect? I love it. How does that affect performance if you start dropping in images like that
It really
and cropping stuff
doesn't
up?
do a whole lot. One thing you'll need to keep in mind with is if the image is large, which this image is 462 kilobytes, you're fine. If it's under
Yeah.
megabytes, you're really not going to have an issue. If you're dealing with
Okay.
someone who, if somehow by accident, whatever service you're using has exported a large image of megabytes worth, you might need to open up
Yeah.
that image and export it as a JPEG, like a smaller JPEG,
Sure.
and compress it down. You only need 72 DPI images, and you only need,
Right.
especially if you're going to be like doing what I'm doing here, I'm manipulating it way down. So you don't want huge
Yeah.
high
Sure.
res images brought in. You don't want some 4K image brought in if you're only dealing with an HD screen like this. So keep it under a megabyte, keep it small and trimmed and use those images, and then you should be fine. And I've not noticed any issue. So this is one look, and let's say I'm gonna play around, and let's say for this one I want to do something a little different. I'm gonna do a rounded rectangle here, just for this sake. It may seem a little weird, but let's just show off like a different look.
Yeah.
Actually, let's just keep the square. Let's just do this. Let's take this image because we're gonna fill it with something else. So I'm gonna just take this. I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna go to my shape section and justify this center. This is now making this box center. And I'm going to make sure this is kind of placed where I want it on the lower part of the screen here. And I'm going to go into this choose option.
Is there the option to see like your safe margins?
I mean, no, there's not like I mean, you could look at a grid. You can look at
Okay.
this kind of a grid, but you don't
Sure.
really have like safe margins like you would like a video player now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I could be wrong. If someone knows how to do that, I'll learn something new. Um, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select this background. This is a worship background. I'm going to scale this to fill it. And I'm going to set this behind the text. And I'm going to take the verse here. I mean, the text of this passage of this content here. I'm going to center this. And I'm going to bring this down as well. I'm going to come into the shape of this again and change the contrast to make sure it doesn't compete too much with that. And now I'm just using the worship background from that pack to create this look.
Man, that is cool. What's cool about that is that if you're using church visuals content, but you still need it to be a little more custom. I mean, you kind of get both best of both worlds there,
Right,
where you're making it look exactly how you want to without having to spend all the time creating all of the
right. You get
graphics.
you get you get help. You get a kickstart because you're using something we've
Right.
created, but then you're manipulating it. How do you want it to execute out? Which is exactly what
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I don't really ever just use something straight out of the box or the pack the way it
Yeah.
is. I
Sure. Or the
manipulate it
series media. Yes.
yeah. I manipulate it the way that I want it to look. So you can do that. You can customize it to look how you need it to, but use pre-done stuff. So now once I built these three items out again, look here, I'm going to now go to my scripture here. I'm going to select the first slide, command click. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to come to the last one. I've now got all the scriptures selected. I'm going to go to theme. I'm going to go to this scripture
No.
setting, and it's going to change them all back out
Oh my gosh. That's brilliant.
real quick.
And,
Yep,
and, and you've already named those layers reference in scripture,
right. So if I
so it,
go
it
in here,
knows.
so if I go in here and I go to the different theme, I'm going to go scripture, verse. Yep, verse and reference. It's all there. It's all
Wow.
set. All because I'm using that same naming convention. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to change these to be like this. I'm going to change this to match this flow, just so we see something different here. This theme, like this. Faithful in exile. Daniel's resolved not to defile himself. Daniel's remaining faithful. God honors the wavering commitment. You'll notice these little caution marks. These are telling me that a text box, a text slide, is potentially going to cause text to spill out of it. And it's probably, to be honest, it's this one. So I'm going to actually shrink the text a little bit more and extend it. And when I come across and select that again, I should be able to get those errors to stop showing. Um, there it is. So now it's
Wow.
justified in a way that is safe. It's not going to spill out. So yeah, that's how I quickly could execute stuff out. And then once I built a sermon, like let me show you now. That's the hardest part, really, because now I could take this for sermon week 2. You guys have that up on your screen. I'm going to duplicate this. Look, this is the sermon from last week. And let's say we're working on this next weekend. So I'm going to say this is sermon 2, chapter 2. And I'm going to come in here, and chapter 2 is what we're going to be in. So I'm going to delete all the scripture from last week. I'm going to select this slide. I'm going to hit Bible. I'm going to say Daniel chapter 2. It's going to load it. There's 49 verses. It's a lot. So I'm going to copy that to the selected presentation. It'll copy it at the end of the entire sermon. I'm going to drag these over here. I'm going to add a blank. And you can see now that I've already built and done some of the legwork, it's really easy to now just come in and modify
Copy
stuff.
paste.
And I'm just going to come in and modify the title. So the hardest part is that first week, setting up your template. And then, when you roll out a new series, you'll probably need to do some continued work on stuff. But really, that first week is the hardest one. But because then once I get to here, I'm just swapping stuff out. I'm using stuff from a previous week, and that allows me to quickly and effectively go through.
Yeah, this
I'm
is impressive, Steve.
I'm going to. And what I like to do is on next week's, I made a mistake, but actually go to your ending slide where your build is, and you get all that set up the way you want. So here's the new points. So here's 1. Here is 2. God reveals the mysteries. I'm going to just copy these in. I'm going to format them real quick, and this is going to help me really quickly now finish out builds because I'm going to the ending of how I want it to finish, and then I'm going to quickly and effectively just remove the content that I don't need. So here's that. I'm going to remove this because I don't need these little markings from the Word doc. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put a period on this, put a period on this, put a period on this. I'm going to delete point 1. I have the 3 points. I'm going to copy this twice. Start at the first build. This is my first point. This is my second point. And now I've quickly and effectively built out 1, 2, 3, and I'm done. And I built that in a couple minutes,
Few minutes.
a few
Yeah.
minutes. Obviously, if your
Wow.
pastor has more, but the same thing still applies. If you've built out the
Yeah.
template for scripture, you have that set up, you have the Bible that your pastor's using. The pastor that I'm serving at this one church uses the Christian Standard Bible, so I've got his Bible loaded. I've got my themes loaded. I'm I'm ready and effectively to jump and go as quickly as I need to, and I can quickly and effectively get a sermon in. So, I mean, for
Right.
context, this church that I'm helping weekly is doing about 125 slides, 150 slides, probably 100 to 150
For
on a given week,
first, just for sermon or for the whole
just for
service?
sermon notes, because he's got
Okay.
multiple. He's got 6 or 7 pages, 6 to 10 pages of
Dang.
notes, and that
Is
takes
there a lot of
me.
media there?
Not usually a lot of media, not usually a lot of images and stuff he's showing, but it's really just text. It's scripture, going back to scripture all over, um, bullet points and stuff for note taking and all that. And
Wow.
I mean, that'll take me between, with a template, it's helping me save time. It'll take me a couple hours, it'll take me an
Yeah.
hour or two, an hour to maybe go through it, and then another half an hour or an hour to check it. So we're doing that on a Saturday or a Friday because he gets the notes ready at that point. But if I didn't have a template, that'd probably take me double, triple that time
Yeah.
because I'm
Sure.
having to manually build that. So it's really helping me get through that quickly. So,
Man, I love
well,
that. I'm
that's,
Steve. You did it again, Steve. My mind is blown.
but I mean, last week we were talking about templates. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have templates built up, you can quickly and easily change things
Yeah.
around. So use that. If you're at a church and you're doing this, I'm at this church I'm at. I am compensated with the church I'm actually at in Pittsburgh. I'm a volunteer, and I use templates to save me time, and I know how to use them effectively. And as a volunteer, that's huge. So if you're a volunteer at your church and you aren't on staff and you do this, as part of your gift of your time, value your time by helping create templates. That'll only just help you get through it quicker. It'll still look nice. It'll look great. But it'll allow you to save yourself some time without having to create stuff over and over again. And it gives you the
And
freedom to think about news. So, like, I'm always thinking about how I can change lower thirds up. I recently did a lower third where I built it in Photoshop and brought it in, and then I just laid the different parts into where I want it. So it does give you the ability to think of some creative ways to do stuff, and you can manipulate it however you want, whether it's bringing in an image from Photoshop or using something in ProPresenter, bringing content in and using masks and fills to create that. So,
if you are on staff, this hopefully adds a little bit of margin into your time.
yep,
So you're not having to bring stuff home. And
right.
then it appears with family time, all that stuff.
Hopefully, it allows you to serve your people better and your family. So,
Yeah.
yep,
Right. Right. Man, I am
it's the way to go, man.
Steve.
This my jam. This is what gets me excited. So,
Steve, you're the rise of the resistance of ProPresenter.
oh, you're funny. The rise of the resistance for ProPresenter. Well, man, it's been great hanging out with you again today, showing this stuff, man. If people have questions, man, just let them reach out to
Yeah.
us. I'd love to. This stuff jazzes me. So if you have ideas for lower thirds, I mean, I'm always looking for ideas for what people have done, what looks good on screen. I mean, let me know. Shoot me an email, ProPresenter at Church Visuals. If you guys have questions and you want design help with how things can look, Sheik would love to help you with that. I could help you as well, but Sheik's the designer. The two of us, Sheik's probably the incredible better designer than I am. So reach out to us. Let
Yeah,
us
I'm the
know
rise of the
with
resistance
design. I know
of
video
design. Yeah.
design. You are.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, let us know. We'd love to be a resource and a help to serve you and your church as you're on this journey, for sure. And yeah, that's about it. That's about it, man. You got any parting words?
Steve, I mean, I have to process. I mean, this was like a master class of what you can do to make you. I mean, that's design. You're
Right,
you're doing design within ProPresenter.
right,
So that's cool. And not only are you doing design, but you're able to replicate it so easily.
right,
You know,
right.
I'm impressed.
Well, I think we've covered this and dabbed this a little bit, and I know I've plugged this. So I think what we do is, I'll say next week, let's go ahead and take step 2 of this, and
Mhm.
we'll take the content we created today, and I'll show you how to
Yep.
create content quickly for a center screen, and then I'll show you how to build out sending two signals out of your computer for
Sure.
two different looks. So
Yep.
that's kind of step 2. If your church is like, well, man, I have lower thirds, but I also need center screen. How do I do that effectively? So now we've kind of dived into the world of themes, which will help you understand that. If you take a
Mhm.
look at this and then join us next week at 11, and what we'll plan to do is dive into kind of how to take this and translate it across two screens of content, how to use themes to do that effectively, how to set those themes up. And then I think upcoming, Sheik, you're going to have a buddy of yours join us to
Yep.
have a
Yep.
discussion in the
Yep. Yep.
coming weeks. So feel
Couple
free.
weeks. Yep. We're going to be talking to a friend of mine who is a media director at a really large church here in Central Florida. Um, so yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, hopefully get to hear from him about maybe
Yep.
what have been his success stories, things that he's had to
Right.
learn, and hopefully serve you in that process. So, like, subscribe to our channel, Church Visuals, the YouTube, so you can get notified when we're going live. We're going to be going live Monday, back to our regularly scheduled time at 11 o'clock next week. If you have any questions throughout the week, things you want us to cover, I'd love for you to drop us a message here at this
Right.
email address, or also you can comment on the video. We'll watch for those comments as well. And really, we just have a heart for you, for serving you. We'd love to be a service and a help to you and your church and your ministry, and allow you to effectively communicate the gospel visually. So we're for you
Sure.
guys, we're behind you guys, and I hope you have a great week.
And Steve also, uh, let's party.
Let's party.
Oh,
Very,
sorry. Wait.
very
Let's
nice,
party.
very nice. Oh, there you go. They both were good. That's very nice. You're awesome. On that note, we'll see y'all later.
Later.